Hey, my confession is that song makes me want to dance. Just a little bit. Anybody else? Ed, make you want to dance a little bit? Cheryl, she was like, yes, me, right there. Hey, I'm so glad that you guys are here. Welcome to church. If you've not been here for a while, or it's, if this is your first time, or if you've not been here for a while, I'm so glad you're here. My name is Joel, and I don't dance. I do dance a little bit, all right? I sometimes I like mimic 80s movies. I do like wax on, wax off. If you don't know moves, you just like go into the 80s movie category, you can figure something out. I do stuff like that, and my wife tells me to stop it. But I'm just confessing that stuff to you because we're in this series called Pastor Confessions, and I'm just confessing my problems to you guys because we all have problems. How many of you know that the person you're sitting next to has some problems? How many of you know that the person you're sitting next to has some problems? Some of you enjoyed that a little too much right there. But I'm going to set up today's confession in a second. But before we get into that, online family, what's up? What's up? What's up? So glad that you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, the podcast base app. There's so many different ways people watch with us right now. And last night we got a message from Joe Harris on Facebook. And she said her and her mom, Shiloh, listen to the podcast every single night right now. And so big shout out to you, Joe. Big shout out to Shiloh. And if you're watching on Facebook right now or you're on YouTube, I need you to do me two favors. All right, number one, hit the like button or the thumbs up button, and I will like you a whole bunch. And number two, if you can just leave us a comment. Just stop, just leave us a comment. And the reason I want you to leave us a comment is because the best comment that we get at any point today, during the message, during the service, I'm going to send some Dolly's popcorn to you all in the mail this week, okay? So the best comment, go ahead and comment away. We're going to send this to you. And some of you guys right now are thinking, like, are you trying to bribe our online family just to get them to comment? Yes. 100%. We are trying to bribe you all to comment, to just have a little community in the comment section. And so while you all are doing that, can everybody in the building, can you just show some love to our online family right now? Just show them some love, show them some love, show them some love. All right, that's good. Hey, let me set up today's message this way. I like to interact with you all, so if you're kind of new, I like to talk, all right? So how many of you have ever gotten a Christmas gift that you love? Christmas gift that you love. If you're sitting next to your boo, don't even think about it. Raise your hand, all right? Just raise your hand. Okay, that's pretty much everybody. I've had some Christmas gifts that I love, so I want to take you back to Christmas when I was 10 years old. How many of you can't even remember back that far when you're 10 years old? All right, so when I was 10 years old, listen, I always kind of know what kind of Christmas gifts I'm going to get because my Christmas list looked like this. All right, I'm very specific. I'll be like, I want a Craftsman drill, model number 634. You can get it at Hawker's Hardware. It's on aisle 2, shelf 3. It's $79.99. Like, I'm very specific about my Christmas wish list. Now, that's a made-up example because I don't drill. I'm not exactly what they call handy, okay? But I am very specific about the different things that I put in my Christmas list. But when I was 10 years old, my parents surprised me. They went rogue, and they got me something that was not on my Christmas list. They got me a toy helicopter that flew using gasoline. Listen, kids these days, they don't know how good our toys were in the 80s, you guys. Like, our toys came with cans of gasoline. Like, that, what an amazing time to be alive back in the 80s, right? Like, if you give a kid a toy with gasoline right now, I think you go to prison. I'm not sure what happens, but I think that's what happens. So I love this toy helicopter. And so me and my brother and my dad, we went out into the field with my helicopter. And I'm reading the directions because I'm a rule follower. Where are the rule followers at? Where you guys follow the rules? Okay, there's like 7 responsible people in the room. I'm reading the rules, and it says only fill up the gas tank halfway. Now, do you think my dad filled the gas tank to my toy helicopter up halfway? Yes or no? No, okay. He capped that thing off. How many of you, that's what you would have done? You would have done that? You would have capped it off? These are all the irresponsible people in the room, all right? And so he put all the gas in it, filled it up, And he started the helicopter. I was already surprised that it started. He started the helicopter, and that helicopter, it like went off the ground. And I'm like, this is so great. And then it got higher, and then it went up, even higher, and then it went up. And guys, I think it's still up in the air because it never came down. I never saw that toy helicopter ever again. And I'm a little salty about that because my parents, guess what they got my son Nixon for Christmas this year? A toy helicopter, okay? And I'm like, is this a trick? Was that supposed to be my toy? Was that supposed to be payback? You're supposed to give it back? You just put Nixon's name on it and said, no, this is your boy Nixon's helicopter. Now, it did not run on gas because it's 2021, okay? Like, it was a little battery-powered situation, a little Elon Musk situation. So anyway, my son Nixon was so excited about this toy helicopter. But I was like, hey, Nixon, some little boys' helicopters go in the air and never come down. You're probably going to lose your helicopter, buddy. And like, he was so excited about his helicopter. But when I told him that, he got like super scared that he was going to lose his helicopter. Now, we flew it a few times that day that my parents gave it to him. But I think the battery was kind of like half used already when we opened it up out of the box. And so I was like, hey, Nixon, I'll charge it overnight for you. And we'll fly it again in the morning when it is fully charged. And he was like, okay. And so the next morning we got out, and we went out into the driveway with his fully charged helicopter, and he was still super afraid he's going to lose his helicopter. And he's like, Daddy, I'm worried it's going to like go up and we're never going to see it, like your toy helicopter. And I'm like learning as a dad still, you know, any learners in here still, like dad learners? You all are interacting with me today. That's all right. Don't worry about it. And so like, he's like, I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. And I'm just still learning as a dad. So I was like, yeah, you probably are, son. I hope you enjoy this helicopter because this is probably the last time you'll ever see it. And he's like super freaked out. And so anyway, he got the remote, and even though he was scared, he hit up on the remote on this helicopter. And I don't know if it's because it was fully charged or if my parents had put like plutonium inside of this thing or something. Or it hit the Earth's atmosphere in like 0.3 seconds. It was like, whoo, gone. Okay, like way out there. And Nixon's scared because of what I told him. And so he dumps it, which means he pulls the up all the way down. And so that helicopter, 100% true, it free fell from like, no, this is an exaggeration, like 20,000 feet. It's just free falling. And it free fell and crashed into my neighbor's roof and basically disintegrated. And we haven't even met my neighbors yet. They only live there in the summer. And so if you're our neighbor, we're the Tices. I crashed a helicopter into your house, okay? But like that helicopter, I freaked Nixon out because I told him that was going to happen. And like it did happen. And I tell you that because here's what that helicopter reminded me of. And we'll put this on the screen. That helicopter reminded me that fear is contagious. Have you noticed that? Like Nixon was so psyched about his helicopter until I told him about my helicopter, and he was super freaked out. Why? Because fear is contagious. Have you ever like been happy, and then you went on Facebook, and then when you logged off, you're like, the world is going to fall apart. Okay, has this ever happened to you? Why? Because fear is contagious. Have you ever turned on the news and in like 2 seconds you turn to your boo and you're like, hey, we got to build a bunker in the backyard. Okay, things are falling apart out there. Because fear is contagious. Have you ever like seen somebody drive in their car all alone with their face mask on? Have you seen this? Yeah. Some of you do this. I know, you do this. You drive around with your face mask on. Like, who are you going to get sick? Yourself? I don't know. The face mask is going to help with that. But, and for the record, I'm all for face masks. Face masks are good. But fear is contagious. Isn't that true? And I've stood on this stage so many times and said, hey guys, you know, the Bible says 365 times, do not fear. The Bible says there's a do not fear verse for every single day of the year. I've stood right here and said that. I've stood right here and said, do you know what the number one theme that Jesus talked about was? Was it prayer? No. Was it love? No. Was it confess to your neighbors when you crashed a helicopter into their house? No. The number one thing that Jesus talked about was do not fear. I stood right here and said that. But pastor confession, I believe that. I've said that from the stage. I know that, but I'm not there yet. Anybody else with me? You still struggle with fear a little bit? And so fear is contagious. And if you've never been afraid, if you're here and you've never been afraid, I'm going to arrange a minivan ride for you to take with my wife, okay? You will be afraid at the end. Trust me, we went to the diner a mile away from our house yesterday. I thought I died 7 times on the ride. Love you, babe. But anyway, but isn't it true that life gives us a million reasons to panic? Isn't that true? Like, is anybody like me and you just can't wait for this pandemic to get over? Anybody, you just can't wait? I can't wait. I think my ears are permanently going to be stuck like this because of my face mask. But as soon as this pandemic ends, there's going to be another crisis, right? And so life gives us a million reasons to fear, but if you miss everything I say today, don't miss this, and we'll put this on the screen. We got a million reasons to panic, but one really good reason not to. God. That's good right there. Listen, we got a million reasons to panic, every single one of us, but one really good reason not to, and that is God. And fear, if you want to just kind of figure out what fear is when we forget that God is in control. That's all fear is when we forget that God is in control. All right, and so I wonder if that's why the Bible tells us 365 times, don't fear, because God knew, like, we would forget a whole lot. We need a lot of reminders. Hey, don't be afraid. Don't fear. Fear not, because we would forget all the time. And so life gives us a million reasons to panic, but one really good reason not to, and that is God. And so even though I'm not there yet, my hope is that we can all get one step closer to panicking a little less in 2021. Does that sound good to anybody? You guys good with this? Okay. So to talk about this today, I want to tell you about one of my favorite do not be afraid stories in the Bible. It's in 2 Kings chapter 6. And let me kind of set up what's going on in this story. The Israelites are God's people, but they have an enemy called the Arameans. Everybody say the Arameans. Everybody say, I don't know if I said that right. Me neither. Okay, so anyway, there's the Arameans who are the enemy of God's people, and they had a king named the king of Aram. That's what they called him, the king of Aram. And the king of Aram kept on coming up with these plans to take God's people out, to take the Israelites out. But the Israelites had a secret weapon. They had the greatest prophet of all time, Elisha. And so Elisha is the goat. Everybody say, Elisha is the GOAT, not Tom Brady. Just say that. It'll make you feel good. Yeah, that felt good. Didn't that feel right? It felt right when I said that. Anyway, so the enemy keeps on coming up with these battle plans. Elisha keeps on hearing from God what the battle plans are, and he keeps on telling the Israelites. And so let me just read. 2 Kings chapter 6, starting in verse 9, says this, but immediately Elisha, the man of God, the GOAT, would warn the king of Israel, do not go near that place, for the Arameans are planning to mobilize their troops there. And so the king of Israel would send word to the place indicated by the man of God, indicated by Elisha. Time and again, Elisha warned the king so that he would be on the alert there. And so what's going on here is Elisha, the GOAT, keeps on figuring out what the battle plans are, what the enemy's plans are against the Israelites, and he keeps on telling the Israelites that plan, what the game plan is. Okay, it kind of reminds me of Nintendo. Let me explain. When I was a kid, maybe you're like me, I'm an 80s kid, there was only like 2 home entertainment video game systems. There was Nintendo and there was Atari. That's it. There was not Xbox, what is it now, 540, 360, what is it? There was not Xbox. We didn't have virtual reality. We didn't have Candy Crush on our mobile devices. No, we had Pong. You guys remember Pong? I think we have a picture of Pong. Let's put Pong up. Maybe we don't have a picture of Pong. There it is. There's Pong. You guys remember Pong, right? You remember this? This is as good as it got for us back in the day. We didn't have Angry Birds. We had ping pong digitally. And so when I was a kid, we had Pong at our house, and we had a 13-inch Magnavox tube TV. That's it, okay? We didn't have a Nintendo in my house until I was like 16 because my dad was a pastor, and so that meant we didn't have any money. Like our family vehicle, this is a true story, our family vehicle was the church 15-passenger van. That's what we rode around in. And so anyway, so one day I remember when I was a kid, we didn't have a Nintendo in my house. I went to my friend Jonah's house, and Jonah had a TV in his room, and he had a Nintendo to that TV in his room. I'm like, Jonah's rich. I was like, I like Jonah, all right? And so I started to use Jonah for his Nintendo. So Jonah Lathbury, if you're watching this, I love you, man. And so we would go to Jonah had all these games in his room, but there was only one game we played on Nintendo, and that was Tecmo Bowl. Who remembers Tecmo Bowl? 2 people. Okay, all right. The rest of you, Tecmo Bowl was like the football game on Nintendo. And so me and my buddy Jonah, we would sit in his room and we would eat Cheese Whiz and play Nintendo. What an amazing time to be alive in the 80s. Kids don't know what Cheese Whiz is these days. They drink coconut water instead. Okay, we were living the dream in the 80s. And now here's how Tecmo Bowl worked. I think we have a picture we'll put up on the screen here. Yeah. You had 4 plays to pick from. That's it. Okay, you could either run it or you could pass it, okay? That's all it was. So if Jonah was on offense, we're playing 2-player. If he was on offense, he would pick one of these 4 plays. And on defense, if I was playing against him, I would guess which play he picked. And if I picked the same play that he picked, I would stop. I would shut him down every time. Just like I'm hoping that the Buccaneers get shut down today. Okay, that's just me. I'm hoping the Green Bay Packers win right in the back room. Rob Holler is freaking out right now about that. He's all about it. But I would shut him down if I picked the same play. And that's what's going on in this story, all right? You have the enemy coming up with these plays, and they keep getting shut down because Elijah keeps picking out the same exact plays, okay? Elijah is saying, hey, to the Israelites, hey, don't go there. He's saying, hey, whoa, watch out, don't go over there. Okay, no, go over here. And so Elijah keeps on picking out the same plays that the enemy's playing, and they beat him every single time. And I tell you that because I want you to know this, and we'll put this on the screen. My point is this: God always knows the enemy's plans. He always knows the enemy's plans. And maybe you walked in here today and you were afraid of something going on in your life, and I just want to encourage you by letting you know that God knows the enemy's plans. And are you ready for some good news? We want to hear some good news? God's plans are greater, are better than the enemy's plans. And here's the trick. The trick is when we focus on God more than we focus on our fear, God gives us this spidey sense. Like Elisha, what was going on, he would get this spidey sense from God, like, oh, you can't go over there, you can't go over there, okay? And so when we focus on God more than we focus on our fears, doesn't God kind of talk to us a little bit, give us a little sense about something? Like, have you ever been on WebMD? Hello? Yes. And something inside of you was like, oh, you better log off of here, you're going to freak yourself out. Like, God can direct us that way. Ladies, have you ever been on a really bad date? Someone said, maybe you're on a really bad date right now. I don't know. But you get something inside of you, you better run for your life. He took you to Denny's on date number 1. You need to run, buddy. You can get that sense. Have you ever had the check engine light come on in your 14-year-old Civic? And you get this sense inside of you that says, hey, do not go to the Toyota dealership right now and buy a brand new Toyota Tacoma Pro model, okay? You need to go to the mechanic instead. Was that just me? That's not a personal example. Is that what happened to me this week? Okay, that's just me. But anyway, God has this way of directing us. God has this way of giving us a sense, like he gave Elijah a sense when we focus on him more than we focus on our fears. And let me just say this. Our enemy and our God are not equal. This is not 2 equal teams going head to head. Okay, no. Our God, we sang today, our God reigns. Our God is supreme. Our God is in control. God has never picked up the controller and turned on the 24-hour news network and be like, oh, I didn't see that coming. That has never happened, you guys, okay? Because God already knows the enemy's plans, and he's working them out for the greater good. Hello, because that is who he is, and that's what he does. For the greater good. Everybody just say that with me, just so I know you're awake. For the greater good. For the greater good. Online family, just type that in there. For the greater good. And so back to the story, Elijah keeps on telling the Israelites what the enemy's plans are, and the king of Aram is not pumped. He is like, ooh, I got a mole in my camp. Somebody is telling my situation. I'm going to call Brazier's Pest Control on somebody. So the king of Aram is not psyched. And so he says this in 2 Kings 6 verse 12. Actually, this is what one of his soldiers said. It's not us, my lord the king. We're not the moles. One of the officers replied, Elisha, the goat, the prophet of Israel. Okay, he tells the king of Israel, even the words you speak in the privacy of your bedroom. Pause. There's a lot that I like to say right now. But we have children in the room, okay? But he's like, hey, the king of Aram, like, hey, he even knows what you're saying in your bedroom. He knows about the Marvin Gaye music. He knows about all of it. And the king of Aram is not pumped. And so the king of Aram says, go and find out where Elisha is, the king commanded, and so I can send troops to seize him. And the reports came back, well, Elisha is at Dothan. And so one night, the king of Aram sent a great army with many chariots and horses to what? Surround the city. Okay, my man sent an entire army. The king of Aram sent an entire army to take out this one guy. That's called intimidation. Everybody say intimidation. All right, so that kind of reminds me of an 80s situation for me when I was a kid. So when I was a kid, we did not have a Nintendo, but we had a VCR player. You guys remember VCR players? Oh, yeah, I love VCR players. I told my kids this week, I was like, hey, kids, when I was like a kid, like in 1990, we didn't have Netflix. I was like, we had a VCR with VCR tapes. And they didn't even ask me any questions about VCR tapes. This is what they said. They were like, Daddy, you were really alive in the 1900s? I was like, you little turkeys. Okay, that's what you are, little turkeys. But when I was a kid, one of the VHS tapes that we watched back in the 1900s was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. You guys remember Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? I love that movie, okay? Like, am I the only one who wanted to get shrunk down so I could eat a giant oatmeal cream pie? Just me? Some of you are like, yeah, okay, you know what I'm talking about. Like, I loved that movie. I loved Rick Moranis. And I remember some Friday nights, we had a video store at the end of our road called Country Video. You can't make this up, okay? Like, oh, and it failed eventually, and it became Country Chapel. Country Video. Anyway, so we would go down there on Friday nights, me and my brother, and we would look to rent different movies, and it was like $2 to rent a movie. Unless you didn't rewind it when you brought it back, you were charged like an extra $1 or something. So be kind, please. Rewind. There you go. And I remember we rented another Rick Moranis movie one time called The Little Giants. You guys remember The Little Giants? If you don't remember Little Giants, basically Rick Moranis is this coach over this Pee Wee football team, the Giants, and they're terrible. All right, the Little Giants were terrible, which is a lot like the actual Giants. And Rick Moranis' brother was also the coach of the Cowboys, and the Cowboys were the best, okay, which is not like the real Cowboys at all. And at the end of the movie, these guys like played each other, and the Giants had this like trick up their sleeve to intimidate the Cowboys because the Giants were the worst team. And so you guys want to see what happened? You want to see the clip? Yeah. All right, let me show you the clip. This is from the 1900s, guys. I think we got some audio somewhere. Can we start over again with the audio? Because you got to hear that part. It's my favorite part.
I use these for acid indigestion. So what are we going to use these for? Intimidation.
That's funny right there, right? That little kid's like, I normally use these for acid indigestion. We're going to use them for intimidation. But they use the Tums to intimidate the stronger team, right? And I'm going to like pull this together, okay? That's exactly what's going on in this story in 2 Kings. The king of Aram is trying to intimidate. He's trying to intimidate the Israelites because they're like kind of like they seem weaker, right? Because you got this giant king of Aram team. And so like that's what's going on in this story. And so the king of Aram is like, listen, if I can just surround Elisha, I'm going to intimidate him and then I'm going to beat him. And maybe you feel surrounded right now. Maybe your dating situation, hello, looks like the little giants eating Tums. I don't even know what that really means, all right? But maybe it's just not good. Maybe your parent-teacher conference situation. We had ours last week. Lord, help our children, okay? Maybe it kind of feels like you're intimidated. You're surrounded with what's going on. Maybe you walked in here today and you feel like some sort of fear. And all you're focusing on is the situation that you feel like you're surrounded by. And here's what I would say to that. What I'm learning is we what we focus on the most. You're going to feel what you focus on the most. And so if you focus on your fear the most, what are you going to feel the most? Fear. Because we feel what we focus on the most. And here's what I know from my own life, and we'll put this on the screen. If I'm full of fear, I'm not giving God my full focus. That's what I know for me. Like if I'm just like full of fear, I'm not giving God my full focus. Why? Because what you focus on the most is what you end up feeling the most. And so like we got a million reasons of fear. We got a million reasons to panic. We got one really great reason not to, and that is God. And the one who is in us is greater than the one who is in the world. And so feel that. Focus on that. And you may feel little right now, but you got a giant God surrounding you. And so you got to focus on that. You got to feel that, because what you focus on the most is what you feel the most. And when you know that God is surrounding you, you can let that intimidate your fear. That can be your intimidation. Everybody say intimidation. Say it like, oh, intimidation. There's another scene in that movie where the kid does that. It's my favorite part. But anyway, so back to the story. The enemy sneaks up around Elisha, and here's what happens the very next morning. So this whole army, chariots, all this, sneaks up around Elisha. Next morning, verse 15 says this: when the servant of the man of God, pause. That is not Elisha. This is the servant of the man of God, okay? So this is like the backup QB. This is like the number 2 guy right here. So the servant of the man of God, he got up early the next morning, had his coffee, went outside, and there were troops, horses, and chariots everywhere. Oh, sir, what will we do now? The young man cried to Elisha. And so this guy is the servant of the man of God. Now, let me ask you a question. If anybody should be able to choose faith over fear, it's probably the servant of the man of God, right? I mean, let's call him the baby goat. This is the baby goat. He has seen Elisha do some amazing things because God has done some amazing things through Elijah. He's been on the front row seat of this. This guy knows that God can kick butt and take names, right? But he feels like he is surrounded by this army. And so all he sees is this situation, and he doesn't see that he's surrounded by God. And he starts yelling, "Oh, sir, oh, sir. Oh, sir," which I think is a Bible cuss word. I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure he's like, "Oh, sir." And my point is this, and some of us need to know this. You're never too godly to not deal with fear. It doesn't matter how godly you are. You're never too godly to not deal with fear. Let me give you an example from last Sunday, from me standing up here on the stage. So last Sunday was the first time I talked to like real live breathing yous for the last 2 months. Everything else has been video and online. And so I got to be in front of you guys last weekend, which was I love that. It's I thrive on this. But it gets me a little nervous when I haven't been in front of you guys for 2 months. So we started out, the message, and we did a shout out to Kristen, and we were talking about her baby. Everything was good. And then I went to get into my message. True story. I totally blanked. I had no idea what I had planned on saying up here. And so my mind looked emptier than my wallet after Christmas. I had nothing in my mind. And so I'm standing up here and I'm looking at my notes. I'm that didn't trigger anything. And I just started mumbling, say, I don't even know what I was saying. I was saying something to you guys, but I was just waiting for my brain to catch up with what was going on. And I'm panicking up here, and I'm "Oh, sir, oh, sir, oh, sir." And I love you guys. I love preaching you guys. You guys are a good-looking church. Good-looking people. All right, Miss Patsy back there, y'all are good-looking people. But when I was panicking and I was blanking, let me just kind of show you what you all look like to me. We have this GIF we'll play. This is what you all look like to me. I was just kind of and you guys were looking at me and finally it came back to me. But I was just kind of freaking out while I was blanking up here. And here's the thing. That's the pastor standing on the stage, and I'm having a little panic moment. It doesn't matter how godly you are. You're never too godly not to deal with fear. When Jesus talked about the theme of not fearing, he talked about it 21 times. Do you know who he was normally talking to? His disciples. And so you're never too godly not to deal with fear. And so somehow in this story, the baby goat, he's more focused on the size of his situation than the size of God. Hello. And then here's what happens. This is in verse 16. Watch this. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, Elisha told him. Everybody say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Online family, just don't be afraid. Just type that out. Don't be afraid, Elisha told him. For there are more on our side than on theirs. Now, if I'm the baby goat, if I'm the servant of the man of God, I would count right then. I would be like, okay, there's more on our side, Elijah. Let's count this out. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2, 1. What do you mean there's more on our side than their side? They have a whole army out there. What are you talking about? 1, 2. And Elisha says this. Elijah prayed, "Oh Lord, open his eyes and let him see." The Lord opened the young man's eyes, and when he looked up, he saw the hillside around Elijah was filled with horses and chariots of fire. Translation, there was a giant army of God's army surrounding the enemy army. And so Elijah's like, don't be afraid. We got God's army surrounding this enemy army. And so don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And maybe you're sitting here and you're like, well, you know, Joe, I feel surrounded right now. And I can't wait to tell you this. I'm so excited. You are surrounded. You are surrounded by God's army. And that is good news. I think somebody should be excited that you are surrounded by God's army. And maybe you walked in here today feeling surrounded by your fear, and I want you to walk out of here knowing this, and we'll put this on the screen. Your greatest fear is already surrounded by your great God. Your greatest fear is already surrounded by your great God. And you can either focus on the size of your situation, or you can focus on the size of your God. And you might say, well, Joe, I don't know how to do that. Well, what did Elisha pray? Open his eyes and let him see. Open his eyes and let him see. But maybe all you're seeing is what's kind of like not good around you. Okay, maybe all you see is the news. Maybe all you see is your check engine light in your 14-year-old Civic. Maybe all you see is your glasses and they're fogged up because you're wearing a face mask. Okay, maybe that's all you're seeing. I don't know. But maybe all you think you're surrounded by is the stuff that's intimidating you. I'm going to end with this. Bo, our worship leader, I love Bo. Bo and I are like best friends. And every few years, me and Bo and our wives and some of our friends, we go down to Mexico on vacation. And, man, it is awesome because we leave our kids home. And so, like, I leave my two kids home. And Bo, how many kids does Bo have nowadays? 52. That's the right answer. But listen, Bo has 5 kids. Can you imagine the stimulus check situation for Bo Dukes? I mean, I think Bo should take us out to lunch after church today. Like, I think he should we'll all go to chapter, wherever we really want, because Bo is rolling, man. He's got all these kids. Anyway, I don't know. Diapers cost a lot of money. But we go down to Mexico on this vacation every few years. And speaking of food, Bo always makes me eat food that freaks me out. Like this last time we were there, we're just sitting at dinner. Bo lovingly put an octopus tentacle on my plate. I was like, is that a suction cup? Because it might get a suction cup to my esophagus. Like, I don't think I can eat that right there. But anyway, we have a great time going down there. I remember this last trip that we were on, the morning we were leaving, I went snorkeling right out in front of our place. And I went like way, 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 way far out there. And it is like, the Mexican beach is beautiful. And I love our beaches. Like, I love the beaches that we have around here. But let's be honest, the water looks like a Yoo-hoo drink. And there's like hidden crabs under the surface trying to eat off your toes, okay? So like in Mexico, it's beautiful. I'm like snorkeling out there. I'm seeing all these fish. I'm pretty sure I saw an octopus that was missing a tentacle. I was like, should I tell him that Bo made me eat his tentacle? Anyway, I'm coming in. And as I'm coming in, swimming in, like I'm really far out and it's still pretty shallow. It's like 3 feet deep. I see something like in the sand right underneath me. And I didn't know what it was. I'm like looking closer. And it's like right under my chest. And like, then I see like the edges of it kind of like flare up. And I realize that's a stingray. And stingrays have giant barbs, okay? Believe me, I Google image this thing, all right? So like they have these giant barbs. So I start freaking out. I'm swimming in faster than Michael Phelps. I'm like, I'm trying to get in. And on my way in, I went over, I don't know what it was, if I was in like a stingray, I don't know if there's schools of stingray, I don't know. There was at least 6 stingrays that I swam right over top of. And so I got to the beach and I'm freaking out. I'm like, Stacy, we're surrounded by stingrays. And she's like, no, we're surrounded by palm trees. Like, it's just beautiful. It's amazing out. All I could see was the stingrays. And I wonder if some of us are in church today because we just need to be reminded, okay, all we think we can see is the stuff around us that's making us afraid. But God's like, listen, I've surrounded you with amazingness. I've surrounded you with beauty. I've surrounded you with so many good things. But you just got to open your eyes to see these good things. And so, pastor confession. I know the Bible says 365 times, do not fear. All right, I know that, but I still panic so many times. And so what do I do? What do you do? What do we do? Well, Elijah said, open his eyes and let him see. In other words, help us to focus on the size of our God more than the size of our situation. And so is anybody down to do that with me? Anybody like going to try to like do a reset, a perspective reset? Anybody at all going to do this with me? And so here's the thing. If fear is a matter of focus, then so is peace, right? And so I'm going to end with this. A year ago, I stood on this stage, just about a year ago, and I read to you guys a lot of the times the Bible says do not fear or do not be afraid. And I had no idea that when I read that to you all, that 3 weeks later, our church will get shut down because of a pandemic. I had no idea. And so I read that to you guys. It was like a rah-rah moment. It was awesome. But then 3 weeks later, we had to close the doors to the church, and we went online for 3 or 4 months or whatever. And I don't know how many times last year I picked up these notes and just read some of these verses that says, do not be afraid. Because we got a million reasons to panic. Last year we had a million reasons to panic, right? Well, we had one really good reason not to, and that's God. And so I just kept on reading this to remind myself. And so maybe you walked in today, you feel surrounded by your situation, but I want you to know you are surrounded by a God that loves you so much that he reminded you 365 times that you don't have to be afraid. And so I just want to read to you some of this stuff, and maybe you just need to close your eyes, or maybe you just need to just take this in. This is what the Bible says about do not be afraid. So buckle up. Here's what we got. Fear not, for God is with you. Fear not, for God hears you. Fear not, for the battle belongs to the Lord. Fear not, for God is coming to save you. Fear not, for he is here to help you. Fear not, for he will strengthen you. Fear not, for he will uphold you with his righteous right hand. Fear not, for the Lord personally goes ahead of you. Fear not, for he will never leave you. Fear not, for he will never abandon you. Fear not, for the Lord knows your name. Fear not, because the Lord will protect you. Fear not, for he knows the number of hairs on your head. Fear not, for he's out to bless you. Fear not, for he will heal you and give you a great reward. Fear not the powers of the people or of hell, because he has overcome them once and for all. Fear not, because nothing can separate you from his love. Fear not, because nothing can separate you from his future. Fear not, because he's given you the victory. Fear not, for it's his pleasure to give you the kingdom. Fear not, because he's the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega, the King of kings. Death couldn't defeat him. The grave couldn't hold him, and the world cannot overcome him. Fear not, for Jesus is alive today and forever, and he is our reason not to fear. Surround yourself with those words right there. That is what's surrounding you. Everybody say, I'm surrounded. That is what we need to believe. That's what we need to feel. That's what we need to try to see. And listen, you don't have anything to be afraid of because you are surrounded by peace. And we open up today by singing a song that says, so even when my eyes can't see, I will trust the voice that speaks. Peace over me. Peace over me. Peace over me. And peace over you guys. And we got a million reasons to panic, but one really great reason not to. And that's God. Let me pray for you guys. God, I'm so thankful for this story where Elisha and his assistant had a million reasons to panic. I mean, huge army, chariots all surrounding him, like a million reasons to panic. And then they opened their eyes and they could see that there was a giant army, your army surrounding the enemy army. And so, God, I just pray that that visual will help somebody today to know that they aren't surrounded by their greatest fear, but you are surrounding that greatest fear. And you already know the enemy's plans. And you are greater than the enemy. These are not like two equal forces. You are superior. And so, God, I just pray that we'll know that we are surrounded, but not necessarily by our fear like we feel, We're surrounded by your great army. And so, God, I pray that we'll feel that even when we don't see it, we'll trust your words to speak, do not be afraid, do not fear, fear not, 365 times. And that is such good news. And thank you for walking us through all the stuff that's trying to make us panic every single day. Little stuff, big stuff, all the stuff. You are with us, and we love you, and we're thankful that you're with us. And you give us that peace. In Jesus' name, amen.